afternoon, good evening to a few of you, and those of you watching the replay, welcome to the Community Briefing. My name is Gregory Sneed, and we are glad you are here. Today is October the 13th, 2022, and we were just kidding around. This is either year one or two. What did I say? AP, after pandemic. So it's a new era. We are in a new normal. We are not going back to the old normal that you knew, and so we've got valuable and great information for you that you will like to have in order to manage your personal affairs and your business. Our guest today is Mr. Michael Banner, and he is going to be sharing some great information, and it concerns money. How many of you guys like money and access to money? All right, so we're going to do that. Anyway, welcome again. My name is Gregory Sneed. I have a company, Lifesaver Financial Services, where I help my clients keep more of the money that they make. And I do that through life insurance solutions, being a financial coach, and a financial literacy trainer. So help people to become reacquainted with their money and get on a good relationship. So if you'd like to feel better about your money, because I believe that when you feel better about your money, you feel better about your life. And I'll have some information in the chat on how to reach. So now, yeah, I think I still call you that. Our Egyptian queen, Crystal went over to Egypt not too long ago. So before she was just our community briefing queen. Now she's our community briefing and Egyptian queen, Miss Crystal Mitchell.
Welcome, everyone. Glad to have you. Yes, I had a great time in Egypt, and if you haven't made that journey, I suggest you all do that. It's an amazing experience. So yes, do that. And in the next month, I'm actually going to South Africa. So I will have hit the continent, both on the top and the bottom. So then I got to get to the middle and the following year. But welcome to the community briefing. This platform was created so that you could be in touch with what's going on in your community, especially as it pertains to you. I think this week, this platform means so much more than it even did 2 days ago, because there's been conversations going on about us in City Hall. And this is why this platform, where we are actually creating our own narrative, speaking to us and bringing individuals like our guest today, Mr. Banner, letting us know what's going on. So we have it firsthand, and we don't get it when it's too late to make this better decisions for our business. So thank you guys all for participating, and please share. My name is Crystal Mitchell. I am the co-director of Recycling Black Dollars. Along with the BABA, this platform is powered and supported by Recycling Black Dollars and the Black Business Association, and sponsored by Southern California Edison, Wells Fargo Bank, and SoCal Gas. We want to thank you guys. You also can contribute and donate to keep the platform on the air. But we're here to support us. This is our platform. In actuality, this is the replacement of Recycling Black Dollars' monthly meeting. We now do it every week. So we want to welcome and thank everyone. Got a fantastic team, Mr. Stephen Turner, Mr. Gregory Sneed, myself, and Robin Billups, and all these amazing return guests that come every week to support us. So thank you guys, and continue to come and continue to share. Hey, Norma from Community Bill, how are you? And I will turn it back over to Greg.
Thank you very much. So today we've got a special guest, Mr. Michael Banner, and he is president and CEO at Los Angeles LDC Inc. And it's a community development institution that provides capital and advisory services to clients operating in the distressed or underserved communities. He has more than 30 years of experience in providing financial solutions to complex community and economic development transactions. I think he paraphrased and said, when the banks turn you down, you come to us. Is that about right? Okay. He has been with Los Angeles LDC for a while. He had his own company, Banner Financial Services. for about 6.5 years. He was vice president at Metro Bank, had a vice president position at Security Pacific National Bank way back in the day. He is a graduate of Pepperdine University, the George Graziosi School of Business and Management, private capital markets program. Also, the University of Southern California, go Trojans, right? And under the Rose Minority and Real Estate Development Finance. And also Loyola Marymount University, College of Business Administration. And just a few years ago, huh, Michael?
Yeah, I've been around the block a few times.
Just a few years ago. So we are so grateful to have Michael here. We welcome his expertise. And so we're going to bring him to the virtual stage. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Michael Banner.
Well, Gregory, thank you for that introduction. It makes me feel a little long in the tooth, but when you do things that you love, you don't mind the longevity of the effort. I'm proud to, again, participate in the community briefing and, offer my support, because I do think this is an important platform, because oftentimes what we don't know causes us to miss opportunities. And sometimes opportunities are not given to us in a way where they're transparent enough where you can act on them. So what motivated me today to make this presentation was the fact that for those of you who are familiar with at all the Small Business Credit Initiative, which is not a new program. This was done in 2010 when President Obama got elected, and there was $169 million downstream into the state of California to target businesses like many of you that are on this call today. The game has changed with Joe Biden coming in, and now there is over $1 billion that is going to be available in the state of California to, again, people like you on the call. And what I'm going to attempt today is kind of give you some basics of the outline of what's happening and what you might want to do to try to participate. So if at all possible, Greg, if you want to bring up that slide, Joe. Okay, so I made this presentation I made it last Thursday, I think, to a working group with the Office of the Controller of the Currency. The Office of the Controller of the Currency is the regulator for most of the big banks. And I am working in a group that focuses on minority depository institutions, which are generally smaller institutions. So it's not Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America. This is the group of financial institutions that I think the largest one is about $80 billion in size, headquartered here in LA County, and it's East West Bank. Smaller institutions may be around $200 million. So this is an attempt by the OCC under the leadership of its acting controller, Michael Su, of trying to create an environment where smaller banks, bigger banks, maybe collaborate together to help out smaller businesses. And I've been involved in these kinds of activities for, a couple of decades. And when this came up, I thought that I should get involved. And I work with a partner of mine, Paul Pride, who runs the Capital Access Group. So if you want to advance to the next slide. And this stuff, I consider myself, as Paul, as subject matter experts. As Gregory talked about, the Los Angeles LDC has been around since 1980. And, the kind of the backdrop of where we are today, this organizations were created in City Hall when Tom Bradley was the mayor. And its purpose at that particular point in time and focus was how do the city make an effort to deal with redlining and how capital and access to capital was not making it into communities of color. I came in 1995 when Dick Reardon got elected mayor to run the organization. Now, my partner, Paul, who's not available today, Paul is, again, African-American financial matter expert in this area. And he actually worked on the first Small Business Credit Initiative in 2000, in 10 as a consultant to the Treasury Department. So what is the Small Business Credit Initiative? Small Business Credit Initiative, as I said earlier, was first launched in 2010 when President Obama was in office, and it provided $1.5 billion to states. With the purpose of what we talk about a lot in this community briefing is how to access capital for entrepreneurship. And when the money was put out by the Treasury Department, states had a fair amount of flexibilities on how to create programs that might be different than what already exists to try to meet the needs in the marketplace. And we characterize that as SSBCI 1.0. With the reauthorization, when Joe Biden got in, they put more money into this tool. And it's a $10 billion program under Joe Biden. California now has, under 2.0, a substantial increase from the 168 million it got under 1.0 to over 1.1 billion. And it's my understanding that the first draw, because it's a drawdown program, has some kind of aspects of use it or lose it, where the $1.1 billion is drawn down over his 10-year period. You get the first draw. You don't get to the second and third draw until you deploy, I believe the number is 80% of your first draw. So that means we've got to take now $357 million and get that into qualifying borrowers and businesses. That's a significant task, and it's like 3 times more than what we had last time. You want to advance to the next slide, Greg? So how do you do this? How does a mechanism set up? Today, the state has effectively 2 methods or 2 vehicles to get the money into the marketplace. One is the California Pollution Control Finance Authority, which is part of the state treasurer's office. And the other one is the California Infrastructure and Economic Development Bank, usually called the I-Bank. And it's part of the governor's office of economic development. So in the past, this money came in and it was allocated 50-50 to those respected, let's call them agencies for lack of a better term. And they each have a process for which you can participate under. This is really a bank-driven, lender-driven program. So a business does not apply directly to those organizations, although they are the conduit in which the capital gets passed down. So lenders under the California Pollution Control Financing Authority, as shown in that second bullet, there's an application that a bank would fill out. Very simple, 1-page application, and say we want to participate in the programs that are being offered. And the I-Bank itself has a similar kind of activity to get participating lenders that are involved in. So it's easy for a bank to want to be involved. Next slide, please. These are the kind of capital, product, and solutions that are currently approved by the Department of Treasury, under which this money comes down to the state. There is the Capital Access Program. For those of you who may have heard of CalCap, that's the program. Typically, it's micro lending, and it's effectively like an insurance kind of program to protect lenders against loss. The Loan Participation Program is another approved program which allows for the purchases of loans, whole or partial or portfolios. This is an approved Treasury program, was not used in California under 1.0. Third one there is the Loan Guarantee Program, which is similar to the SBA 7A program, where a bank makes a loan and receives protection against loss by a guarantee. The state has its own version of that Loan Guarantee Program, and that's been around for a while, and it's offered out by Financial Development Corporation. In this market, PCR would be the example of one of those, for those of you who know Pacific Coast Regional. Fourth program is the Collateral Support Program, which is a cash collateral program for a lender. And the easiest way to understand it would be, I'm a lender, I want to make a loan to Stephen Turner, and I go, Stephen, you're a great guy, we've heard all these great things about you, but we'd like to have a little bit more collateral to ensure your loan gets repaid. There's a process where a bank could then go to the state and say, we want to help Steve. We think this amount of money is necessary to help him, the state would actually send that capital to the bank. They would hold on to it, make a loan to Stephen, loan all works out, and the state gets the money back. That's a simplistic example, but that's how it works. So it's cash collateral. The fifth program is a venture capital program, which will be very new in California. They're launching it this year. Since I do not do venture capital, I can't give you a lot of detail on how that's happening, but my understanding is they're hiring a consultant or somebody to help the state put that in place. The focus is to try to figure out solutions where venture capital presently does not go. And that probably looks like a lot of people on this call is where the target is for that venture capital program. And it's probably going to be smaller dollars than what you normally expect in venture capital in a traditional sense. So these are the solutions that exist. Of these that are on this slide, the loan participation program is under consideration, and the venture capital program has been approved and is scheduled to be launched. So those are the ways into the capital box for these programs under this $1.1 billion. You want to go to the next slide? So what happens, what needs to happen when we do this? What are the directives from Treasury with this $10 billion that's going across the country? And just so you perspective, California has the largest allocation of this money of any place else in America. And rightly so, because California by itself is like its own small country in terms of the economic impact that it has in the US. So these bullets tell you what's important. One is that Small Business Credit Initiative is supposed to support small businesses, okay? Secondly, you need to deploy capital to targeted populations and locations. So for those of you who've heard of enterprise zones, empowerment zones, opportunity zones, community redevelopment agency project areas, those are all the normal places that are underdeveloped, under-resourced, where this capital is designed ultimately to be able to lift up. So those are some of the targets. And for those who are in those areas, this is another tool that you may not have been aware of that you want to look into. One thing about the program is that the federal government wants to see a huge impact. So supporting small business, supporting them in areas where it's hard to get money. The other thing that they have there, which is kind of a hard thing to do, is they want you to leverage this money 10 to 1. When I say leverage this money 10 to 1, that means for the $1 billion that California could receive, the Treasury Department is looking for a $10 billion economic impact. That's a significant number. Is it doable? I can show you examples where I've actually done 10 to 1 leveraging in LA, in a lot of the places that we all live, work, and play. Another attribute of this program is there is target technical assistance to, this is a term that you'll hear more the more you dial into this, called SETI. And SETI stands for Systemically Economic Disadvantaged Individuals. That is actually a defined term in federal regulations that I actually never knew. It's been around for a while. It's not a new term. I just had never heard it before. And so this is something that they want to highlight. And so depending on how you look at that, and if you consider yourself, once you research it, a SETI, this money is supposed to try to find you. So your ideas, your projects, your aspirations have a box or a bucket of capital that you have to artfully figure out how to access. And finally, at the end of the day, having economic opportunity and creating jobs is a very important thing amongst all of these federal programs. So for me, I'm a lender. And I basically put together transactions for financing. So I push out debt to people that I hope helps them, and I help them use the debt to produce an activity that hopefully repays itself and also then helps them accomplish their goals. So what I'm going to talk to you about now is what I am proposing we all start to think about, especially as we think about wealth creation. And we all know and seen all of the data that says people of color have less net worth than everybody else. And the numbers are somewhat appalling. And most people build net worth on real estate. And my business model for years has been commercial real estate, not affordable housing, but commercial real estate. So I'm going to talk to you about how to leverage at minimum $1 million transaction where you get 5-to-1 leveraging using this money. And it's going to be used in the places that we care about and should go to. So on this assumption, we're going to create a $1 million real estate project. And this is a proxy for it on a project basis, something at $1 million. It could easily be talked about as a portfolio of these at $100 million or a portfolio at $1 billion. So you can just add commas and zeros to kind of think about how large you can make this. Under this example, though, you take a minority depository institution, which I've talked about already, and let's say the continuing example is East West Bank, the largest minority depository institution, I believe, in the country at $80 billion. They would originate a loan for $1 million to a qualified business, commercial real estate transaction. And in this case, it actually could be an MDI. It could even be a CDFI. So, the world of CDFIs play a role in this. There are some banks that are also MDIs and CDFIs. But let's focus on the $1 million transaction, which is going to provide, in my example, 100% financing. Why 100% financing? Because the data tells us that we don't have any net worth to put into transactions anyway, right? So it's not like we've got a spare $300,000-$400,000 laying around, to say, let me go do a deal with. That does not necessarily exist for most of us. So then you have to use maximum leverage to try to get in. This $1 million is broken down into two pieces: a $500,000 loan and a second loan for $500,000. You put those two together, you got $1 million. The $500,000 first trustee loan is something that most banks can wrap their brain around and do all day long, where they can make a loan with an eligible borrower and a qualified value property for half the value of the property. That's not that hard to do. And most banks can figure that out. The second piece at $500,000 to get you to 100% finance becomes where you have to then think about what innovation can we bring to that. For those of you who know anything about SBA lending, you can get an SBA loan up to $5 million, and maybe 90% of that would be guaranteed by the SBA under the 7(a) program. That's one way. The other way is the SBA 504 program, which looks like this. You get a $500,000 first. The SBA, through a bond sale, downstreams 40%, in this case, $400,000 into this transaction. And the borrower would then have 10% in to get you to the $1 million capital stack. What I'm going to suggest is, how do we do this without the borrower putting in the $100,000 into the capital stack? So the bank would originate effectively both loans at $1 million and then place the second loan into a vehicle that is supported by this SSBCI money. And you could also attract private investors that want to be part of this kind of secondary $500,000 note. And we've seen examples of corporations making pronouncement that they want to invest in Black banks, they want to invest with Black businesses, but you have to create products, I think, to be able to allow them to do it easily. If you want to go to the next slide. So this graphic shows you how you do this. So under the Small Business Credit Initiative in this 2022 version, you would have on your right side small businesses and borrowers who are looking to borrow money, right? If you want to borrow money, then you have to repay it back. And that's why you see the loan payment moniker there to say, look, you borrow the money, you start to pay it back. You have a successful transaction. That money is going to, if you focus on the left side, it's going to be capitalized either directly on the bank or in a special purpose vehicle of some kind, where a senior lender, as I described, that makes the $500,000 loan. The second $500,000 is called the sub-debt piece of this, or sub-debt lenders. And that's where the California SSBCI support would roll into that. And it would be managed, if we're lucky, by a SETI fund manager. So somebody who knows you, knows the communities that you're in, and is in a better position to help you because they understand the markets that you live, work, and play in. And they're compensated through fees just like anybody else in managing this loan participation model. And if we're lucky, we'll get a bank who has the requisite skill set to manage and collect the loans. And I can share with you, I've done this before. And in this case, this example, when I did it, I had Co-America Bank there as the interface between me and the borrowers, collecting payments and dispersing loans. So this is the overall kind of big picture model. And now we're going to drill down to, okay, so what does it mean to do this innovation in the secondary piece that I'm talking about? You can go to the next slide. Okay, this is the junior bifurcated note tranche A and B. And for those of you who are not lenders, this may be a little deep in the weeds or wonky, but think about it this way. We're only talking about here really the two notes on this transaction for $1 million. As you can see, there's a participating financial institution who approves and makes this loan. The loan is then put into a special purpose vehicle that holds the note or notes, and it's $1 million. And so on the right side, you have the $500,000 note that I talked about that banks can make all day long. And there are platforms out there that do this already, which is one's run by Zions Bank, one's run by Morgan Stanley. They're national platforms, and they've been doing this for a while. So that's kind of like a plug and play attribute to this. The junior secured subordinated $500,000 piece is the part that looks like the SBA 504 program. Here's where the innovation happens. In the 504 program, as I described, the borrower puts in 10%. That particular junior note would be $400,000, and it would be funded by ultimately a bond sale. What I am suggesting is that that $500,000 note gets basically split into pieces. And for this example, I'm just going to use two pieces. And in that, we have a senior tranche of this $500,000, which means it has a priority of $300,000. And then we have a subordinated piece, which is $200,000. The SSBCI federal funds would go in and take that subordinated $200,000 piece. So if you look at it all together, the lenders that are traditional lenders are not basically taking $1 million risk. Their risk is no more than $800,000 because the state money is there to buttress that other $200,000. To the extent that you can increase that, it'll make it easier for the other pieces to come together. And what you do then is you have a vehicle that has an investment opportunity for folks who want to invest in that quote unquote B piece note and the subordinated piece of that B piece note. Foundations could invest in either part of that. Banks could invest in either part of that. You've heard about large commitments that have been made by banks when they merge. One of the most recent ones was the $88 billion commitment by PNC Bank. They have committed to doing community development lending. This would fall in the realm of community development lending. There is the US Bank, MUFG Union Bank merger that is not yet closed. They have already talked about they're going to make a $100 million commitment to do community development under a guise of a community development benefit agreement. These are all places where banks can do something that's generally sometimes outside of what they traditionally do. Those are the other vehicles that are there. So if you think about the billions of dollars that banks want to put out there, and you think about the $1 billion that the state has, putting those two things together should allow for a more robust ability to drive capital into places where it hasn't gone in the past. And let me stop here and take questions for those of you who might have some, because if you're not a lender, this is a lot to digest, and I want to make sure people leave with at least a basic understanding of, you can stay on that slide, Greg, this one here, of what's happening here. So questions.
When I when I do the screen share, the mute button disappears. I had to find it. Someone had asked about One United Bank, and I think Crystal asked about it. I think Stephen said, does One United Bank consider an MDI in the SSBCI program? And looks like Crystal said that One United does not do small business loan. They outsource to Lendistry. Okay.
Yeah. So first of all, they are an MDI. They are a minority depository institution. Most of the Black-led minority depository institutions are in the South. One United and the new compilation of founders are the two that have a footprint in California. And this kind of lending is, I would say, not the bread and butter of either one of those banks. So Lendistry would fit in where you see I have CDFI. They could do this. Lendistry just, I think, launched a 7A program. If you're in the 7A program, you cannot do the classical SBA 504 program too. So this could actually be a tool that Lendistry could use that puts them into the same kind of product that is done by traditional SBA 504 banks and CDCs. So that's an avenue for those of you who have a Lendistry relationship. And Lendistry is one of the participating financial institutions at the state. So they are probably aware of what's going on with the SSBCI funds, and maybe have some ideas of their own. Other
James,
questions?
You're up next.
Yeah, quick question. Sorry, I don't have my camera on. I'm actually holding my child right now, so there's a lot going on. But Michael, so you say this is for real estate in particular. So where does an organization like LIST fit in? And is that the ABC program where they giving 10% to minorities? Is that a 100% program? And how does that work in this presentation? The LIST, because I know they have a 100% program where they're giving 10% grants.
So this is the question about LISC, right? Did you say LISC, James?
Yes, LISC, LISC.
Okay, Local Initiative Support Corporation has a national organization that is a CDFI and has an LA office. So LISC is a CDFI. So again, LISC could fit in the box where it says MDI or CDFI. LISC has a bunch of its own programs. I'm not aware that LISC has 100% financing commercial real estate program. If they do, that's great. LISC did offer out and got money for something that's called Black Economic Development Fund that is run some guys out of New York. It is kind of like a private equity real estate fund. They just hired somebody to be in LA. I haven't met them yet. But so this as a product can be used by anybody who fits the eligibility requirements that the state wants to see for you to be in a participating financial institution. And to the extent they control the borrower, then they have the ability to offer the borrower this kind of financing. And in fact, you could do this if you wanted to without the state's money in it. I mean, I've done this. And the opportunity we have with the SSBCI money is to now have a dedicated source to be able to go to with this that is focused on these markets and these kinds of borrowers. So the conversation with LISC, because they don't have anybody running the LA office now, I think they're interviewing people to try to hire the replacement for Tanua. Will be interesting to see how it plays itself out, because LISC is a well-respected national organization and primarily housing related though, and not necessarily commercial real estate. So I do think the domain of the banks, especially the smaller minority depository institutions, they live and breathe commercial real estate. They put about 60, 70% of their own portfolios into commercial real estate. So you're coming to them with a product that they understand and like to do. and you bring in another bell and whistles to help them innovate and reach into the parts of the market where they may not actually play.
Now, sorry, there's a second part. So is this particularly for commercial, retail, and industrial? And does this include construction, or is this just the acquisition of the commercial properties?
So I'll give you an example. It could be all of those. And this is one way to do it. Some of the other programs that I mentioned earlier that exist, and I'll give you by example. I use, and I think it's in 2012, the collateral support program. Let me describe that transaction to you. I had a school that I had financed back in 2008 down in Long Beach, needed to build 20,000 square feet in Long Beach for a brand new campus. And they had to do it from the time school shut down in June to open in September. They sized the project at $5.5 million. Their bank, in this case, it was a bank that I had worked with and took them to East West Bank, decided that they could help them and lend them an additional $3.5 million, I think it was, to get there. So they were looking at a basically $2.5 million shortfall. I orchestrated a transaction where East West Bank was the senior lender. I used a collateral support program for $2.5 million to come in, fill that gap. So you had effectively a state program that was already approved by Treasury being utilized for construction. So that's part of the answer to your question. Yes, it can be done for construction. And this was a nonprofit school. And so you have non-recourse in it because it's a nonprofit. So it was pretty much so probably at the outer edges of where banks traditionally like to take credit risk, but it was done with the support of this SSBCI funds. They got the buildings up, brand new 20,000 square foot classrooms, great looking building. And this is, again, the second time. The first time I worked with the school, I put the money up ourselves. I lent them $1.5 million to build their first permanent building. So it can be used for all commercial real estate product types that a lender, and again, a lender wants to be involved in. So if you're talking to a lender that doesn't like retail, that's probably not a good lender. If you're talking to a lender that likes industrial, that's probably a good fit. So the lenders tend to be the driver in what kinds of transactions you're going to get involved in. But generally the SSBCI money is kind of agnostic unless you can't do casinos, and there's some sin businesses that the money is not going through. But there's not a prohibition about almost all classes of real estate.
Michael Anderson, you're up next.
Hello, Michael. It's good to see everybody. Hey, Gregory and Crystal. Is there can you leverage in one of the earlier lending slides, I should say? So I was wondering, could you leverage like a current loan or something to leverage that capital to use against multiplying the amount of money that you get? In other words, when you said 10 to 1, is there a way that I can leverage an SBA loan to get more capital if needed?
I think the simplest way to look at that is that you need to show proximity for the activity. Mm-hmm. So to the extent that you are in a loan or negotiating a loan now, mm-hmm. and this money comes in, it's easier to justify that the loan that you're working on now is helping being leveraged by the new money from the SSBCI coming in. To the extent there's a significant amount of distance between those two activities, mm-hmm. it's harder to do that because then it doesn't make any sense. And I would say the way to deal with that is to really talk to the lender that you're working with now to make sure they understand what's available through these other activities that are approved programs at the state. And there's no necessarily prohibition against mixing and matching some of these things. Mm-hmm. But the federal government would not like to say, and this is the example they usually give you, you get an SBA loan and then you get this same class of federal money. Mm-hmm. Those are non-starters because then the federal government is subsidizing the whole thing and it's leveraging itself. What they want to leverage is outside capital. That's
Oh, okay.
non-federal in its
Okay.
characteristic. That is the premium case
Okay.
to make.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
Lamont, you're next, and then Mark, I've got you.
Yeah, hi. Great to see you. Great presentation, Michael. And I'm just curious, how does venture capital fit into your construct, the diagram that was just taken down?
This presentation does not include anything on venture capital.
Okay.
And the way to get the best understanding about what might happen on the venture capital side is to probably go directly to the iBank. They are going to put up that venture capital program. You know, I'm not smart enough to do venture capital, so I keep telling myself.
Oh, don't say that.
No, but I'm very good at doing what I do. And
Yes,
I stick
that much
to
I
my
know.
knitting, and venture capital is needed. I mean, to be clear about that, it's just that I'm an expert at doing these kind of innovative debt-related deals, and
Got
I
it.
don't have time to mix the two. But there is probably expertise at the iBank that you could connect with and find out exactly how they intend to do that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mark Robinson, and then Namak. Mark, you're on mute.
That I was just answering a question in the chat. I think Stephen asked, how does one apply? And so I was just responding to that. Essentially, one can apply to the state loan guarantee program, SSBCI state loan guarantee program, directly through PCR, PCR Business Finance. I put our website in the chat. But for the other programs, as Michael mentioned, they're primarily lender driven. So one just need to inquire with one's lender to get the process going with either the CalCAPS program or the collateral support program. So because those are run out of the Treasurer's office and the pollution control office. So either with your lender or for the guarantee program with PCR.
And shout out to
And
PCR.
let me add,
Yep.
in the Greg, in those slides that I gave you that I hope you guys circulate, there are links in I think on the last page, they will take you to those particular CPFCA and the iBank. They already have a list of lenders that are already enrolled in their programs. So you can find out lenders that are in their programs already and participate, and you can encourage your bank or your lender, if they're not involved, to enroll so they can participate. Those are the two ways that I would suggest you look at it.
And for those of you who need to, if you want to do a screen capture of these links, and then Crystal will look to see if we get this out, get these links out, or get them in the chat if we're able to copy and paste in there.
And you can always call me.
Or you can call Michael Vanner. Namak, you're up next.
Hi, Michael. Thanks for the presentation. Have you seen this program working with like the CDFI revolving loan fund? How can the revolving loan fund benefit from this?
So I think there's two things that you should think about. One, as a CDFI, you are an eligible borrower under the SSBCI program. So working with the state, a CDFI can actually borrow money from this to use in its revolving loan activities. The other way, and I'll use my experience, is that banks have literally trillions of dollars. And if you even take a look at the geography that you work in and focus on, and if you go and do to the FDIC's website and just do a market share of deposits, you'll see that there's hundreds of millions of dollars in the markets that you care about. These are the banks that take those deposits. So I'm always an advocate of, they have people who live in these neighborhoods money, and they need to figure out how to put it back to work in those neighborhoods. And CDFI revolving loan funds are a linchpin to creating that collaborative environment where that can happen. And I think for me, that's what I try to do, and that's always is what works best. I'm not sure that I'm aware of any CDFI doing SBIC 1.0 that actually borrowed money under that program. It is a permitted borrower, though.
In case I missed, when can we start to participate in this one?
So if you think about it, 1.0 already existed. So the mechanism to participate is already there. This is new infusion of capital under 2.0. So it's not necessarily a new program or activity. It's an embellishment of an existing program that is getting a significant amount of money allocated to it. The two things that could be different in 2.0 is one, the iBank is launching its venture capital activity. The second thing is there are discussions going on at the CPCFA, Pollution Control Finance Authority, to how, if it should create a loan participation program. So those will be the two things that could be new. And then I'd say the third thing is that across the country, there's $500 million that is available for technical assistance of some kind. And sometimes that means, legal, accounting and those kind of things. And I don't think it's described particularly well about what that is. And in fact, Treasury has an RFI out asking questions about how should it be structured, how should it be done. So those folks that are involved in providing technical assistance, you might want to look into that, because there could be a way for you to enter that way also. I'm not sure how much California has dedicated to that, but it's got to be tens of millions of dollars.
One last question. Does the CDFI have to be California coin certified?
That's a judgment that the state would make. I would not be surprised that the state wants to see certified CDFIs. So Treasury certified CDFIs more than likely are going to be the priority, since there are no more state certified CDFIs. They did that for a while through the Department of Insurance and then collapsed that to just use the federal Treasury certification.
Mark,
Thank you.
it looked like you had a reaction and you have your hand up. Did you have something else to add there?
Yeah, just a couple of things on Namush's question about how does a CDFI participate. Michael is right. A CDFI can be a borrower through SSBCI, but a CDFI can also be a lender through a CDFI. So Namush, if Vermont Slauson wanted to make a loan and take advantage of the guarantee program as a means of risk mitigation, as a means of capital preservation, you could certainly submit those loans to PCR for a state guarantee in support of making those loans. We guarantee loans for CDFIs up and down the state. And so that's nothing. And in fact, we as a lender, we are also a CDFI. When we make a loan, these days, we do not do any loan without either a state of California guarantee or an SBA community advantage guarantee. So I would, if that's something of interest, Namush, I would certainly, recommend that you reach out to us and we can start that process. We guarantee loans. I'm sure everybody knows PACE. We're working very closely with PACE and another organization up in Fresno. I think we've guaranteed loans for LISC. So yeah, that is something that you can take advantage of, Namush.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Does anyone else have a question? I don't see any other hands or anything else in the chat. Did we get everybody?
Hey, well, let me add one more thing in closing. I'm consider myself a commercial real estate junkie, so to speak, and I've built a 30-year career on commercial real estate. Um, and in the graphic behind me, I used to run a monthly mixer to try and keep discussion going on between people of color about commercial real estate, and I used to call it Create Commercial Real Estate at Tuesday evenings, and I hosted them on the rooftop at 1010 Wilshire downtown. One of the things that I believe is helpful is we collectively make sure that commercial real estate development, and it kind of goes to James' this question, is considered to be a business and not passive investment. Because historically, the rules have always said that if you're not an owner user, then all real estate transactions get characterized as passive investment. And I would just suggest that we have to move to the point where if somebody who has a REIT or private equity investment from pension funds in California can buy and build real estate on Crenshaw, why can't we? Usually turns on the fact that you do not have the requisite equity to do that. I think there's a lot of people of color that are experienced in commercial real estate. I've spent 25 years working with USC and the Ross Minority Real Estate Program to ensure that people of color, and especially Black people, get the tools and the requisite expertise to collaborate and network to do this. Otherwise, we will not own and do anything on Crenshaw Boulevard. I mean, the ownership on Crenshaw Boulevard, as an example, is turning into institutional and private equity investment as we speak. I mean, I've got clients that over, last 20 years, I probably financed about 50, 60, $70 million of commercial real estate transactions on Crenshaw. And the oldest transactions, I can tell you, the properties were worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Now they're worth tens of millions. So in terms of the buildup in equity, my clients have generated a significant amount of, you want to call it balance sheet equity, because you don't get it unless you sell the properties, but their properties are worth significant, a lot more now than they were, 10, 20 years ago. And I don't think that that's going to stop. And so if we can't get in, we won't be able to build wealth in the communities that we spend our time and live, work, and play. So anybody that's interested in carrying on the discussion about how do we get commercial real estate developed and owned by people of color, please call me, because we need to get the clarion call out there that it's time for that to happen.
Michael, you've looking back, we mentioned at the beginning of the program that you were with Security Pacific back in the 70s, and I imagine back then access to capital for Black and brown folks was extremely limited and challenging. What's happening now? Post COVID pandemic, there's a lot of programs. Is access to capital easier? Is it more? I mean, it seems like a lot of programs out there for lending, having securitization on loans and grants. Where are we and where are we heading?
So I would say for me that there are certain elements from the, call it the geographical perspective, that these communities are now, for lack of a better expression, they're in the kill zone. Capital has figured out, we should go here, invest, and buy. We don't have the capital. We don't even have access to that capital. That's why we're seeing ownership go to other places. Now, there's a great deal of interest in trying to figure out how that changes. And the easiest example that people might know about is the $30 billion that JP Morgan Chase has committed to closing the racial wealth gap. I can tell you that I'm a JP Morgan Chase customer, have been for a long since they've been in this market, and I'm a shareholder. I'm stock in the bank. I presented them with a transaction for a business social enterprise on Crenshaw, and they said, no, we can't figure out how to do it. JP Morgan holds more deposits in the Crenshaw corridor than anybody else. They actually used to own debt of the same organization, when they acquired Washington Mutual. So the top line headlines about how we're going to change things is important, but until you can see it happening on the ground, I don't see a demonstrative change. There's a lot more people to talk about getting money, but my motto has always been, we don't pretend, we just lend. And until you start counting and seeing the transparency on where this money is going and who's getting it, I don't think the game really changes.
Wow. So there's a lot of headlines and press, and but when you get down to it, it's still
well, I just ask all of you. You guys are all sophisticated people. You're in the know. Who do you know that's gotten a loan recently? And have anybody gotten a loan more than $1 million? Who are they? Where are they? Who did it? Which is great if somebody's doing it.
Well, let me just say this. In fact, I can see people on this call that have gotten loans here recently through PCR. And I guess I'm a little bit more optimistic. PCR has operated in this market now for 45 years. And we are right now trying to recapitalize what we call the People of Color Business Elevation Fund. That was originally capitalized with a grant, $2 million grant from Wells Fargo Bank. It included loans. It included technical assistance to businesses. It included interest rates buy down with 0% during the first 6 months, 0.5% for the second 6 months, and a lifetime loan cap of 3%. It included no loan fees, and again, geared towards businesses owned by African Americans and Latinx entrepreneurs. So we are attempting now to do another raise of capital for that fund. That would be approximately $10 million. And we can see exactly where we'll put it is right in those communities. And we'll take that fund statewide. So again, I guess I feel a little bit more optimistic. In addition to the People of Color Fund, we've instituted a program called SELF. That's the Sister Entrepreneur Loan Fund. And by sister, we mean businesses owned by African-American women. We are just starting next week, the second cohort of that fund. There are 30 women business owners in the second cohort out of 116 applicants. And so this stuff is real. Clients are coming with great ideas, great businesses, great passion, and PCR is doing everything that it can to fund them. And it's not just PCR. I think CDFIs nationwide are experiencing an interest in the work that we do. You can see that with Lendistry, with LISC, with Vermont Sloss and EDC. I think that we're probably busier now than we have been in decades. And Namush, I would appreciate it if you would chime in on that as well.
There was also recently 3 young men that purchased a building, which is in the millions, in Leimert Park. So there are certain things that are happening. But again, our network of information just gets stulted out at some point, and we don't know all that's going on. So, Michael, I do think it's very important, and thank you so much, because if we don't have these conversations within our own world, we don't know what's going on, and we assume that we're not trying to build wealth. We are, but we also need to know who is doing what, and how do we get to you and make those opportunities happen. I know Michael Anderson has a big project going on. I don't know if you guys I think Michael Banner, you and Michael Anderson have had conversations. So I do think there's things going on. We don't know all of what's happening because we're so disconnected and we work in separate silos.
So
And,
so in
and
closing, I would
Crystal,
just
Crystal,
say
that's why
that I'm
the
going to
community
probably
briefings.
raise another. I'm going to put $1 million out. So I'm working on selling a building now. I'm going to take $1 million, probably maybe $1.5 million, and I'm going to put it into the structure that I just showed you, and see who shows up to be involved. And I mean, from my perspective, that's how you make it happen. You know, I'm putting in my own money. This is not a grant. This is our organization betting that we know how to do this. I did this before. I raised a fund for $10 million. And if you go to my website, which is in one of those links, you'll see at the very top, there is a 504 ACE loan fund. I put in $1 million. I got $9 million from other banks as private equity investment, no grants. Everybody got back 100% of their investment and made nearly 5.5% return on their investment. And if you look on the presentation on the website, it will show you who got the money, how many people of color got it, where did it go. So you can do this. And I'm a proponent that we keep trying. I wish everybody luck in doing whatever they want to do, but we have to keep the effort and be consistent about it is the message I would send.
Yes, yes. Mark, you were saying something at the end of prior.
Well, just a couple points. Crystal, your point of us not being in the know is why the community briefing is so important. And I just wanted to thank you and Gregory and Stephen on this effort and bringing this to the community on a weekly basis. The other thing I would say is I guess the business model with how we go about our business might be different. Michael doesn't believe in grants. PCR certainly accepts grants regularly because, number one, they represent equity into our organization and they create longevity for the organization. But more importantly, they allow us to pass on the fact that we have zero cost funds. We can save on our the fact that we don't pay for our funds allows us to pass that on to our borrowers with lower interest rates. So there's benefits all the way around.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We're going to let Michael do Anderson say his say, and we are a little bit over. So we do
I'm sorry.
appreciate everyone. Thank you so much. And yes, this is why it's so important. So please, guys, continue to help us grow. And we also are looking for donations to continue the platform. So Michael Anderson, you had something?
I'm always moved when I see a momentum for making investments into our communities, as well as when federal funds come down. I was on a program about maybe 6 months ago talking about the project that Crystal mentioned. And I guess I just want to say our communities have such a tremendous need, not only for business loans, but really for business that makes corrections in our communities at such a scale that people in business there can grow. And between the funding and housing and infrastructure now is making the deals that makes those large transactions that nurtures our communities in our interest, because other people are using that in their own interest. And that is what our political leadership needs to understand, how to make that deal work in our interests. I'm glad to see the affordable housing being built on Crenshaw, but to me, that should be office buildings with salary jobs that trigger economic growth at the street. affordable housing can create low-income impacts. So that's, I guess, a statement about we need to make things work in our interests and not accept, because most of the affordable housing developers, and although some of them are Black, it's basically a business revenue model that doesn't work in terms of making our community's quality of life better at the scale it needs to be. And I just say that as an architect and urban designer, somebody's been in Crenshaw for 30 years. I guess disappointed that it never transforms the way other communities I've worked in, Culver City, Santa Monica, or even West Hollywood. So I guess that was a statement. I thought I had a question. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Michael. Though we needed to hear that, but it's the passion, right? And I love the fact that we're all coming together, because we can't make change if we don't all work together, right?
We need large deals. We need large deals.
Right,
I
exactly.
like hearing $10 million doesn't make me go wow, unless somebody's writing me a personal check. It's billions of dollars in needs to transform our communities, and other people are buying it up. As Michael Banner said, CIM bought a damn property on Adams and Jefferson. And Black people were deterred from doing it back, decades ago. I'll stop. Sorry. That's me.
Hey, Michael, I got you $1 million right here, man. It may not clear, but you got it.
Good conversation.
Next week, the 20th, I think one of our speakers fell through. So we're going to have a program and talk about our political environment, some of the ballot measures. And it's been a quiet week as far as LA politics is concerned. We didn't touch upon that today, but I think we'll hit on it next Thursday. So if you'd like to share some input about the recent City of Los Angeles events, tune in next Thursday, and we hope to have some information, some people to contribute with some of the propositions that are on the ballot. A lot of money being spent on props like 27 and 26 and 30, and I mean, of course, we've got a mayoral election. I'm in the city of Inglewood, so I don't get to vote in that one, but actually there's some elections coming up in Inglewood as well. So tune in next Thursday. Robin, good to see you. Have you joined us there? I think Stephen may have slipped out. Well, we got some great speakers lined up in the coming weeks, so we appreciate you coming here and love your input. Crystal, you want to close us out?
Yes. In the chat, I also put in a link from Sydney Kamlager Dove. She said October came in on fire, and there's a lot going on. But she has written an article, and I incorporated the link in the chat. So please bring it out. But we do have to help Karen Bass. If you guys are the election in November is really, really important, especially from a local standpoint. So Karen Bass is fighting for her life. It's very, very important that we're supporting those that have our best interests. As you guys can see from this past week, there are other groups that have their best interest at hand. If we don't start fighting for ours, we're going to be in really a lot of trouble, because obviously there's a lot of back conversations that are going on that really do implicate us. We're always on the bottom of the totem pole, and everyone's always looking to push us further down. So please, guys, come back next week. If you have input, if you have someone within your network that has input that will be valuable so that we're voting for our interests, please invite them next week, and they do come back. It is so important. Voting is our voice. It is our right. We had ancestors that died for it. And as well as anytime someone is stopping you from doing something, there is something really behind that. So if they're trying to take your vote away from you, there's a reason why. So please come back next week. You guys have a great week. Mark, thank you. Michael, thank you. Michael Banner, thank you. James, thank you. All of you guys. No, Namash, thank you guys all for being supportive. I believe Community Bill is celebrating their 33rd, or is Norma there? I know that's not Robert. I think that's Greg. Can you speak on that real quick before we close out? Are you there, Greg? Young? Okay. Anyway, check it out. Mina Bill is celebrating, I believe, their 33rd year, and they're having a big event at the Sheraton LAX. So check that out, guys. And we will see you. Hey, Mr. Crawford. Wow. Good to see you. And you guys can save the chat. I will try to make sure it's incorporated and this presentation that Michael did. So thank you guys. See you next week.
Okay, Crystal.
All right. All right, Ken.
Crystal, real fast.
Yes.
This is Gregory Young. Unfortunately, I'm driving, so my mic was on mute.
Oh, okay.
I'm actually on my way to Community Building. It is our 30th anniversary celebration on October 27th at the airport Sheraton. So I'll chime in more, if not Mrs. Salcedo, on next Thursday.
Yeah, and you guys have to talk to my Robert about coming out next week so he can bring some input for our open forum on voting in November if he's available.
Listen, I'll make sure he's available. Trust me.
All righty. Thank you, guys.
Not my face, but his voice.
All right. Okay.
Right, Crystal.
Bye-bye, everyone. Okie dokie.
Now the recording.
Oh, yeah.